working on my second one currently, but my first book, The Scavenger, was just published in November. So yes, I am.
I was looking at a person reading that book before getting on the bus at Willowbrook Mall. And I'm like, huh, interesting. I'm going to BookCon. There's a book in front of me, and she was like holding it in her hands, loving it. And she's flipping it over to the back and reading it and flipping it back over to the front cover. I was like, wow, she's really into this book. I wonder what. And I showed up on the convention floor, and there's the book and you sitting right there. I had to tell you that that I've seen your book in the wild.
That was honestly one of the coolest experiences I had because it was so random, but it's just so cool. But every time I see someone holding my book, half of me is so excited, like, oh my gosh, they're reading my book. And then the other half of me says, oh my gosh, they're reading my book. Like it's very mixed expressions, but it's good.
Has this happened to you often? I mean, if you
Well,
walked into a bookstore and said, people are reading my stuff?
yeah, no, a couple of times I have seen it out, especially in the community. I have a few copies floating around our library, so
Uh-huh.
I have seen it a couple of times. Or people will recognize me and they'll be like, "Hey, I think I've seen you before," and that's
No
always,
way.
yeah, no,
That's
that's
cool.
it's pretty cool because like our newspaper did our like central newspaper in our area did a little blurb on it, which was really cool, and it helped get the name out. And it's honestly been a dream come true. It is so surreal, but
That's
it's
awesome.
been awesome.
What's the journey of the novel? When did it start?
So the novel really started, I would say, about 2 years before it was written. I wrote a bunch of stuff when I was in grade school, and it was mostly only in the fantasy genre. But as I grew older, I started leaning towards realistic fiction because I started realizing that sometimes the true stories are even crazier than what's we read about in fantasy because they could technically happen.
Hmm.
So I started thinking about different characters and how so many people can get impacted by one big event. So that's when I started getting the idea for this police investigation that somehow affected all of these different people and brought them together in ways they never expected. And I started thinking about the different characters and how they could be related and how they interacted with each other. And one by one, the four main characters that the book is driven by started coming to light. And then that was where it all began.
What's the timeline? Just
So from when it was published.
yeah, like how long did like when you finally realized that you were developing a novel? I mean, what was the time frame on that? Was it
Honest,
over years or was it just over months?
Honestly, it was pretty quick for a book being written. The first draft was finished in about a month.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I once I planned it out and I knew that this book was a go. I was like, yeah, no, I just gotta get this down on paper as fast as possible. And I
Just
mean, it was a
looking just looking at the binding, it's 100 no, it's about 55,000 words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere I think, yeah, it's around 50,000 words. So it really just it all came out, and the first draft was a lot shorter than that. It was around 40,000 words. So it definitely needed a little love and care.
No, I gotcha. I same thing with my novel. I mean, my first one was like, okay, aim for 40,000, and then once you get there, celebrate. And everything
Yes.
extra is like icing or something along those lines. Uh,
Yeah.
so you wrote a novel in a month.
Mhm.
This is obviously not the first time you've ever put words down on paper. What had you written before this? You said fantasy in grade school, but
Yeah, no. I also I started writing a realistic fiction called "Give Me a Voice," which again, it's very that one was really short. It was more like a novella. I did actually a lot of my writing on Wattpad, but I since deleted that
oh,
account
interesting.
just to.
Oh,
Yeah,
why?
no. It's honestly it's like this little free app, and it's actually a really great
Oh, I've
writers
used it
community.
before. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't get any. I didn't get a community. Nobody cared. I'm like,
Yeah.
here are some chapters of my novel. Read them, people. And they're like, no. Okay.
No.
How about some short fiction? No.
Oh man, well, if I had found your work, I would have read it because I tried to support people when I could and tried to find them because we're all just writers trying to find
Yeah.
ourselves. But that was really the start of it all, and that's where that short book that I wrote about these girls, these teenage girls in high school, was really where I found my love of realistic fiction. And I started a couple stories and stopped them, and then none of them really came to light. But then once I started working on the Scavenger, which was then it was called The Webs That Bind the City.
Oh yeah,
I
great
yeah I
title.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that quote was actually from a scene that was later cut in the book, so that's when I had to change the title to the Scavenger. But I did love that title
Yeah, it was really
for
good.
when
I
it
like
was
that.
there.
That's poetic.
Thank
So
you.
you've written your first novel. It took a month.
Yep.
How's your second novel coming?
It is. This one's taking a lot longer. It I've
Anxiety,
been.
right? Now you're
Yep.
not. Now you're not sure. How did I do that again?
Yeah,
Crap.
no, it
Do I
just
still have
it
those muscles?
honestly, because I feel like the first one is doing so well, and I mean BookCon was a huge success, but
Oh,
this one I feel like
fantastic.
I now, like, with the Scavenger, I was trespassing in completely new territory, completely new water, so there was really no expectation. But now that people know my name, and I have this pretty decent book that to start out with, now I feel like I have to reach that point again and try to surpass it. So it's definitely it's a little more difficult than I had initially expected.
You're not indie published?
I'm self-published through CreateSpace, but I do have I'm under a publishing company called Nebula Press.
Nebula.
So yes.
Sounds like a science fiction publisher.
Yes, they publish fiction in general, so they're working on fantasy as well. But right now, they're mostly in realistic fiction.
I mean, so you never wrote a novel before. You wrote Sheltered with an ed, right? I'm not at my computer. I pace.
Oh, it's this it's the Scavenger. Sorry.
Scavenger. That's why I couldn't find you. I couldn't find anything I brought back from BookCon. I was like, it's all gone. All my
Gotcha. No,
kids just went through my bag and like grabbed all the stuff they wanted, and all my cards and stuff disappeared. I'm like, oh my god, what was that woman's name? I had no clue. What was the title of her novel? And every time I thought about you, I would type in Sheltered, the Sheltered, something along
gotcha.
those lines. I'm like, I could not find you. I had no
No.
clue how I found you. Oh, I found the cards. I finally found all my little things that I collected.
There you go. Yeah, no, I was the same way. I got people were giving me a tons of business cards and stuff, and I had them all little in a little Ziploc bag, and I was looking through them. I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so many of them here. I hope I got them all.
What do you do with them when you get them? I mean, what do you think you should do? I mean, now that you've already been to your first book con and you've
Mhm.
collected the cards, how do you organize
So
the after?
what I tried to do was I tried to write down on each of them like a little just little notes on try to remember who I was talking to with and what we were talking about, because some people said that they were interested in doing like an interview or a review swap with their books or something like that.
Yeah.
Some of them were offering services like formatting or editing and things like that. So if the card didn't specifically say it, I tried to write down a little note. And then
Interesting.
other times, yeah, I tried to paperclip them together. If some were just fellow authors that were trying to get their names out, and if they were again offering services or reviews or something, I would try to organize them that way. So when it got back, it was a little bit easier. And whenever someone did come up to me, I did try to get in contact with them or at least visit their page and sign up for their email and stuff, just for the time that they took to talk to me and to reach out. So I tried to give them each a little time, just to remind them that I did care about them and that it was
Yeah.
nice that they came up to me.
It's interesting because I mean, I guess you do sit there for a long time with nothing happening, right? I mean, how do
Hmm.
you engage with people as they're walking by? I mean, obviously this is not what you do. You're an artist. You sit behind a computer and you punch out words
Hmm.
and make stories and stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, you got to clean your brushes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you got to get dirty with the actual work, and that Comic Con, that book expo was work. And you're
It
sitting there forever.
Yeah, it really was. The first day was actually pretty good. There was a pretty steady stream of people, and one of the best ways to I think engage people was just simply to make eye contact and smile. And a lot of times they would actually come over.
Oh, really?
I noticed it was hard because I mean my legs would get tired after a while, and I would sit down. But they were less likely to come over when I was just sitting there, even just
Yeah.
like
I was gonna
and
say a lot of people were sitting down and they look gloomy. Like
yeah.
they had their phones up and they were messing around. Like, dude, I'm like looking to interact, and you're making me feel like I'd bother you if I came over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's what I was trying to avoid. Is I was trying to say, okay, like I'm here and I'm happy to meet you, so feel free to come up to me. I'm glad to talk and chat. So that was probably the best way. And I mean, I had my parents there to help me with everything. So
Oh, cool.
if worst comes to worst, I would just talk with them and ask them how it was going. They ran and got me some food and stuff. So it all ended up working out okay.
So, how many people do you think you actually got your name out to during those 2 days?
Well, we sold actually a couple hundred books, which is honestly, I wasn't really
Wow.
sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect the first day, and we overbought because we buy the books in bulk. So I mean, it's not like they're going to expire or anything. So we just figured we would take them home and use them for other
Yeah,
events if we didn't need to. But we actually sold a pretty good amount.
it's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, and almost every person that I at least talked to at least took a business card or a bookmark or something in that respect. So I heard that there were like several thousand people there. So I'm assuming like a couple hundred people, I think, maybe even more than that, at least saw me and recognized the name of the title.
We're obviously going to get into craft because I'm very curious. I have not had the opportunity to read your novels, so I'm not really
Hmm.
quite sure, how things work as far as the fiction's concerned. But I am very interested in. It sounds like you invested a lot of money in your first novel without really any idea of whether or not you did the right thing or
Hmm.
were off track the entire time. I mean, just bulk buying a couple hundred books. I mean, that's an expense. Did you do an
Yeah.
editor and content editor and hire an artist for the cover too and all that good stuff?
I did, yeah. So I had editor based in London, and she worked very well. I actually found out about her through a friend, and she did an excellent job. She helped with line editing and then just overall arc and tone and things like that. And
Interesting.
I had several rounds of beta readers, which also helped. And I was very lucky in that my beta readers did a really good job of finding what needed more expansion and then the
Yeah.
characters that needed a little more time, and they honestly did a really good job with that. To save a couple hundred, I actually did the formatting myself, which was a lot of time and a lot more work than I really expected. But
Oh yeah.
it was really informative, and I actually learned a lot. And now I appreciate when I open a book and I see nice formatting. I think to myself, okay, like this is good. They spent some time on this.
You know what you don't do is you don't select all and then copy it and then paste it
Yeah.
directly into Amazon.com and
Mhm.
publish.
Mhm.
And then buy the book yourself and then notice that there's a freaking inch of white between the black and the spine.
Yeah.
And your name is misspelled on the back cover because
Uh, yeah, no, that's was one of my biggest fears because like I'm so focused on all the work. I was like, okay, make sure that my name is spelled correctly, that like acknowledgments is spelled correctly, all like the little stuff that you don't want to normally think about, but you just want to
yeah,
be sure.
yeah. I mean, I did. My wife's cousin told me your name is misspelled. I was like, no, it's not. She showed me. I was like, it's
Oh
like
my
yeah, that's my
gosh.
first name too. It's like Brain. It's not Brian. It's Brain.
Okay, unintentional pen name was created.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have an interesting name. I mean, JL Willow, is JL how you were referred to in real life, or do you have a real first name?
So my real first name is Julia, and L is short for my middle name, which is Laura. And then my last name, I'm not even going to say because it's actually Polish and it's
Uh,
very hard to pronounce. And it was very hard to say. So once I realized that I was going to start, like this was going to be a real thing, the scavenger was definitely coming. I realized I really needed to find a name that was less than 10 letters and didn't have a Z in it. So my last name actually means white willow in Polish.
oh, interesting.
So I took the Willow, and that's where JL Willow came from. So I stuck to my roots. I didn't create something totally new, but
Yeah.
it is definitely, it kind of differentiates and just makes it a lot easier for people to find me.
Well, I mean, also you get a little separation too, don't you? You don't
Hmm.
get to carry the baggage of who you were before you published that novel into publishing that novel.
Yeah.
I think anyway. I mean, that's my theory on a pen name anyway.
Yeah, it carries,
Um,
and it definitely, I feel like people act a little differently when you have a pen name. Like I have some friends that they'll jokingly call me Willow or they'll call me JL, but it definitely like you said differentiates, and it kind of adds like a new layer of reality. Like, hey, this is a different version of me. Like this is still me, but this is the professional version of me where I do create.
Do you feel obligated to tell your fans that this is a name I constructed around my authorial self?
I don't I don't like to I don't I well I mean Willow is obviously a I think most people can tell that Willow is not my my given name, but if people ask, I don't try to hide it.
Yeah.
I do say that yeah, it's based on my name, so I didn't just make it up or something like that. But I do like to mention that it does go back to my roots, and I think people appreciate that because I'm not trying to create this new version of myself, although it kind of comes with the job. It's just based on my old self, I guess you could say, because it's still me. It's just again a different version.
I like it though because it does give you I mean, I wrote down the time that we started talking about this in case you want me to delete all this out.
Hmm.
And involving your writer's name. I mean, I write under a pen name too. I don't want to I did the same thing you did. And I don't want to write 10 letters out
Yeah,
or have a connection to my past.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, if you feel you can, I honestly I have a blog post about it on my blog, and when
Oh
people
yeah.
ask me, I tell them the truth. So it's your choice. If it's a little too choppy, you can absolutely delete it if you want. But I
Well,
don't really have
I
a
also didn't want
preference.
my mom like commenting all my stuff either.
Yeah, no, a couple of the first of my reviews on Amazon were my parents and I. There was one day I was like, "Oh my gosh, look, I got two new reviews," and I looked and it was my mom and dad. I was like, "Come on, guys, are you kidding me?"
That's
So,
awesome. Well, that's another benefit of having a different last name. And my wife wasn't able to leave a review on my first book, a collection of short stories. Amazon said, no, you guys live in the same address.
oh, wow,
I guess they're really cracking down because reviews are important.
yeah.
Reviews are incredibly important in terms of getting people to read your stuff. How?
I was reading this article and it said something about like if you have people going to your work from a certain link, they wouldn't let them review it or something. It was
Oh,
very yeah, no, it was very strange the way Amazon is trying to get a hold on this. So I don't really know what the ins and outs of it are, but it is definitely getting more difficult.
it's interesting because they actually got into the publishing game themselves too.
Mhm.
And so you designed this cover yourself?
I did not. I had
Oh,
this
okay.
done through Demanza. No, I'm not that talented in the arts industry. So I went through a company called Demanza, and that was the most expensive part was working through them. But they did an excellent job.
Yeah.
They took all of my requests and they made it exactly the way that I pictured it. And it fits the vibe of the book, it fits the tone, and it just overall it's everything that I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it a lot. It's subtle, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't really scream independent. It doesn't scream independent at all, actually. It's very deep. It
Hmm.
has like a texture to it. And I gotta tell you, the lady in front of me in line really enjoyed looking at it over and over and over again.
Oh, that's great. It's
So thrilled
great.
with her book. She was so thrilled with it. I'm like, God, man, I gotta ask her something about this book, and I just kept to myself because it's obviously New Jersey, and I don't want to get stabbed. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, New Jersey is an interesting place.
right. And we're right outside the city too, so it's like interesting and then it gets boring really fast, but still interesting kind of
Yeah.
spills into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like a mix of people here that you don't really get anywhere else.
Anywhere else, maybe Connecticut? Nah, maybe not Connecticut. I think maybe Westchester, right past the
Yes.
Bronx, is kind of like this. You get
Mhm.
that bleed out. People who just can't necessarily afford to live in Manhattan, they kind of bleed out to the outer places, which is basically everybody now. My God, the whole city is outrageously expensive.
It really is. Like I went into the city because the book takes place in New York, so I tried to take some trips out there and try to find some locations and take some pictures for reference photos.
Yeah.
But it is definitely going in there. I mean, just parking alone can cost like
Yeah.
50, $60. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's why we have the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get off right there at the Port Authority and do your thing, get right back on the bus. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm afraid of the train too, because it seems like every year there's like one major train accident
Yeah.
randomly that kills like 30 or 40 people. It's like, huh.
Yeah, it's honestly they need to. I don't really really think that there's another way to do it, but they should at least try because obviously what's going on right now and just there's so many people in it, everything is so crowded. So
Yeah. Such a wonderful way to travel though, too. I mean, you have the countryside just streaming along, you don't hardly ever stop, and then just
yeah,
tons of people die randomly. Hmm.
yeah,
And it's
it
expensive as hell. It's really expensive.
yeah.
I don't know. I've been to Europe a bunch of times, and I think they have it pretty well there. Things are, reasonably priced, and it doesn't seem like anybody dies.
Yeah, well, no, I guess not as often, but I mean, I don't know how many trains New York has compared to other cities and things.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tokyo's a little bit hardcore. You've seen
Yeah.
documentaries of them, like they have pursers, I guess pursers, maybe that's the wrong word, shoving people into the doors.
Yeah.
You think, oh, that train is full, and they'll grab like 12 more people and shove them in there. It's like,
Oh.
how is that possible? I mean, you've been on the, the 4 line or the 5 line or the 6 line or something like that during
Mhm.
rush hour.
Yeah.
That door pops open and like people spill out, have to
Yeah.
shove themselves back onto the train just to keep going.
It's
And they're mean about it
crazy.
too.
Yeah, yeah, they are. I took a trip to Europe last summer, and it was just it was definitely a different atmosphere. I mean, I've seen videos of that before, but when we were in Paris, the train system was actually very nice, but they had a lot the signs were very difficult to read. And I
Yeah.
feel like New York, they have it a little more simplified, but it can be difficult to traverse if you don't exactly know where you're going.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't think that it's the same line color, so it's going to go in the same exact direction because I've done
Yeah.
that before and ended up someplace I did not want to end up, South Bronx at a
Oh.
at a
Oh.
subway stop going, okay, now what? This is when I first,
Oh my
there's a
gosh.
guy screaming at his girlfriend. You think the girlfriend's going to break into tears and like start running away looking for a cop, but no, she turns around and starts screaming at him.
Oh. Oh. Yeah.
Like, oh no. And I'm a complete virgin. I've never been to the city before. I'm like
Mhm.
20 something years old. I'm like gonna move here, but I don't know. Like middle of the summertime, it's 120 degrees out.
Yeah. Living in the city is really hard. It
Yeah.
depends what area you're in. Some areas are harder than others, but it's very, very different. And I mean, I live in a generally rural area
Yeah.
of I'm sorry, a general urban area of New Jersey, but it's like still it's very different to be living in this big city like that.
Yeah. I lived in the Upper West Side for a little while, and that's easy. Oh my God. That was the best. Get on a train, you can go anywhere you want. You don't have to worry
Wow.
about anything.
Mhm.
Park Slope, I lived there for a little while. Same, you get on one train, you're in the city. You can basically do anything in like 30 minutes. But we also lived in Riverdale, and that was impressive. It was like a 20-minute walk to the train,
Mhm.
up a hill, somehow both ways. I have no clue how that's even remotely possible with physics. And then you walk, you walk up three, you walk up 3 flights of stairs to get to the subway. And I don't understand how they continue calling it a subway at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, because that's
Your nose
so
is
weird.
bleeding. You're so high above the ground. It's ridiculous.
Wow. Huh.
And then it takes an hour and a half just to get to Midtown. It's like, okay, this is what people do every day
Oh,
just to
yeah,
go to work.
it's crazy. That's the one thing, because I know a lot of people who live outside the city, and then
Mhm.
they go in every morning and every night they go back home, and it's
Traffic both
yeah,
ways.
it's traffic both ways. And I mean, I guess it's way cheaper than actually living in the city, but I mean, time is very precious as well. So it's
Right?
just you gotta
Precious.
yeah, and you gotta think
Priceless.
about it.
Yeah, man, you're sitting in that car a long time. I like podcasts, but I don't know if I like podcasts that much. I mean, I will drop my kids off at daycare and get stuck in a little bit of traffic, and it's murder. I hate it so much.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
I have like 18,000 ways to get around 46 just to get home.
yeah.
You
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Time for me is honestly, it is slightly more valuable than money, because it's just it takes out so much of your day. And I mean, I'm sure there's been all these health things about how sitting in traffic is like bad for your health and raises your blood pressure, because it's very anxiety inducing as well.
Well, I used to smoke cigarettes a long time ago. I think I'm 6 years clean now, but I used to tell people
Mm,
all the time, smoking a cigarette is like, walking down the sidewalk next to a road. It's no different. You're sucking in the same chemicals.
yeah,
Like in traffic, my God, you're just sucking it in, lungful after lungful. Just there's
yeah,
nothing
that's
protecting you. I mean, you're not airtight in your car. You're definitely getting the environment outside, inside.
yeah, that's very true.
I don't know, man. What do you do? Remote commute. That's the answer.
Yeah,
Everybody works from
honestly,
home.
yeah.
Or
And
like Korea just reduced their work their mandatory like their maximum work week now is 52 hours. I guess
huh,
nobody's allowed to work over that, and
wow,
it used to be 60.
wow.
So I'm thinking, reduce the maximum number of hours that anybody can work to 32,
Mhm.
and there's a whole day that people don't drive.
Yeah.
I fixed the
Yeah.
problem. I mean, I don't understand, how did Donald Trump become president? I could have been president. Would you ever want to run for a political office?
Honestly, that's a whole different side of things. I am not. I like sitting back. I mean, I do watch the news and I make sure that I stay up to date on political issues, but
Yeah.
for me, it is just there's so many ins and outs, and I've read books, and I actually watched a play recently about it. But it's just it's a whole different side of things, even from
What
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 we see
what
on
was
television.
what was the
Uh,
play?
Oh my gosh. I forget what it was called. The Parisian Woman. It actually had Uma
Oh.
Thurman in it.
Oh.
Yeah, that was one of the trips I took into New York recently. It was a great play. Very interesting. I mean, Thurman did a great job. She's phenomenal. I had seen her in movies before, but it was really cool to actually see her on stage. And it showed just a completely different side of the whole political view and what really goes on behind the scenes and all the scandals and everything that goes on behind it.
Uma Thurman's interesting, right? And I wanted to ask you also about this.
Hmm.
Uma Thurman's interesting, and then there's the whole thing with Gwyneth Paltrow too. And obviously, I'm alluding to the hashtag Me Too movement and
Hmm.
stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe you're not aware of him. You know who Will Wheaton is?
No, the name rings a bell, but not
He's
specifically.
he's like king of the geeks, basically. If he wanted to take over the country, I would get behind him and kill everybody. He used to be on Star Trek as a kid. He used to play Wesley Crusher.
Oh, I think
Yeah,
that's where I know the name from.
but he's married to a woman a little bit older than him who just recently wrote a children's book, and she's been marketing it a little bit. She published it independently, and she was actually sitting catty corner from you at Book Expo. And yeah, I
Oh,
bought a copy of
wow.
it because obviously, she knows Will Wheaton and he's my personal hero. I've got to get a copy of the book from her. So
Hmm.
turns out though, she had a miserable experience. Turns out she was harassed endlessly, not only because she's a celebrity's a wife, but also
Hmm.
because she's a woman who dared try to sell a book in public or something along those lines. Publishers were laughing
Wow.
at her for, you're just a spouse of a celebrity. That's why you're selling so well. That'll die out. They're not taking her seriously and things like that. So I was curious about your experience in terms of being a woman at Book Expo. And I
So
didn't mean to say woman like oddly. Obviously, being a woman's not odd, but
yeah,
you know
no,
what I
no,
mean.
no, but I understand what you're getting at. Honestly, I had a couple of people that once they read the back of the books, the scavenger does go into some pretty deep topics from the police's point of view, and there is some talk about drug use and what dealers do. And I mean, I did all my research behind that. I did not do this half-heartedly. I put all into it. I watched a ton of documentaries and interviews to really get a good look behind the scenes and make sure that I wasn't skimming over anything. But there were
Mhm.
definitely some people when they came up to me, and I could definitely tell they were giving me like the side eye, like, did you really, like, is this really what you're doing? But for the most part, most people were really welcoming, and they really looked at the back, they read through some of the pages, they listened to what I had to say, and a lot of them I think were really welcoming overall. I mean, there's always going to be some people who they just don't appreciate it and they don't see all the time and energy that went into it, but for the most part it was actually very good. It was a very professional experience.
Oh, good. I mean, it isn't unfortunate that we have to have that kind of invade everything, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
just seems like and I think this is actually a good thing that it's being put out into the open like this. And not even talking about just hashtag me too, just the people who kind of don't care. The
Yeah.
lights are kind of being shown on them a little bit too right now. And I think that's opening up our society and allowing us to discuss it and move past it, hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think it's bringing it to light also for people who may not even know that it's a problem. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of people think it may be behind us, but now that it's coming more to light and people are becoming more aware of it, they can help support the people like me and other people who are writing and creating and doing things that might have at first gotten the side eye or gotten some dirty looks, but now
Well, it
that people
still
are,
does, doesn't it? I mean, you
I
tell
mean,
somebody that you write novels or whatever, they look at you kind of like you're sad.
yeah,
Oh, you're
yeah.
sweet. What do you
There
write?
honestly, and that's one of the things they don't tell you about becoming a writer is
Oh,
that there's going to be these people, because I mean, I feel like everyone has that hidden desire to want to write a
I
book
guess somebody
or
they want to be they want to be appreciated for activities they partake in, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like there's almost that hidden desire that creates this like little a bit of jealousy, I think, between people, and they're like, okay, like this guy thinks he's hot stuff, or this
Yeah,
girl
right.
thinks she's the big deal because she was able to sit down and write a book. And I don't think that way, but I'm like, like I really did put a lot of time and effort into this, so I hope someone appreciates it.
Right. Enjoys it, right?
Yeah, or
And that's the
at
funny
least gives
thing
it a
from
chance.
yeah, it picks it up, opens it, at least reads that first sentence, which is the most important part.
Mhm.
Unless you're like Patrick Rufus, who wrote a book that took me forever to get into. I tried that thing like 5 or 6 times before I actually got into it.
Mm.
Turns out to be a great fantasy story if you're into that kind of stuff.
Oh
What's it
wow.
called? The Name of the Wind or something like that?
Huh, no, I'll definitely check it out. I haven't been reading a lot of fantasy lately, but I've been getting more into the genre.
Don't pick it up. He promised 3 books and he's only written 2, and it looks like the third one's gonna be made into some kind of weird TV series.
Oh.
So if you want to get irritated, yeah, go ahead and hit him up and read
Although
these 2 fantastic books where a third one 10 years ago was promised, and this guy's just sitting around smoking weed, not doing it, I guess, or what, I don't know what.
oh my gosh. There's a couple of series out there. Like my when a couple years ago my friend introduced me to this book, The Host, and it's like this young adult sci-fi story, and it was actually pretty interesting. They made like an okay movie about it, but she's promised the sequel for like it must be at least like 7 or 8 years now, and it just doesn't look like it's coming.
Was it popular? Did it get bought?
Yeah, no, it was pretty popular. And I mean the
Interesting.
movie actually did pretty well in the box office. And I was looking online, like there were a bunch of chat rooms talking about it and contemplating like when's this gonna happen? Maybe she's gonna release like at least a title soon, but it's been like 5 years, still nothing. So I haven't all of my series like my the Scavenger's a standalone, and this book
Okay.
I'm working on now is a standalone. So I don't have a lot of experience writing sequels or a trilogy or something like that, but I mean, I think it's really sad when you put like your fans on hold like that. Like we're waiting for this. You set up this great story, and we wanna see what comes next.
Yeah. I mean, you might think you have more than you do, right? I
Yeah.
think that's what happens. You sit down, you write this 100,000 word novel, it's 800 pages long. You're so impressed with it. Of course it's going to be a series because that's what people do.
Hmm.
They write 100,000 word novels every single year. I talked to this guy on this podcast, he just said you have to write one every month if you want to stay successful. I'm like, Jesus, man, how are they good if you're writing a
Wow,
100,000 word novel a month? That
that's
doesn't make any
crazy.
sense to me, right? I mean, I'm not going to read your
Yeah.
stuff because I don't feel like you care about it that much. I mean, if I
Hmm.
quizzed you on who's in your novel, are you going to know? I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's important. You have to love it a little bit, right? I mean, nobody wants like a quickie. They want
Hmm.
they want you to take
Yeah.
your time. You know what I mean? Not to be crass, but I mean that's the
Hmm.
case. When you're a reader, but he's popular. People love him because he's constantly putting out content. My mom and people like her, I guess, kind of just pick up books and they just have to have words in front of their eyes. Like, Mom, what's that book about? A lawyer in court. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lawyer in court. I got 3 words. It's a 100,000 word novel, and she couldn't tell me anything specifically about what she enjoyed about it. She just lets it wash over her.
Wow.
In terms of
I feel like the best way to do a series or even a trilogy is how Tolkien did it, where he writes this ginormous, like I don't even know how many thousand words, like it must
right,
be like multi-thousand word book, but it's one solid story that he
yeah,
just broke into different parts. And I mean that way the story is cohesive, the characters flow together. And I mean, it's he wanted to publish it as one thing, but I mean, no one's going to be lugging around like I don't even know how many pages that would be if you put it all together, but it's just that is just such a solid example of like a really good fantasy trilogy.
yeah. And I think I don't know in terms of like number of words compared to people are producing today. It's small, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
gigantic. Like maybe 60, 70, 80,000 words per novel.
Mhm.
You're looking at 240,000 throughout the entire thing. People are doing that left and right now.
Yeah.
Did you read Stephen King's On Writing?
No, I haven't. There's a couple of King's work that's on my list, but no, I haven't gotten there yet.
That's kind of his memoir writing tutorial book. I'd highly recommend it if you haven't read it. It goes into a lot of details about his life and his writing life and his professional life. But one of the things he said was, back in the 70s and 80s, people were trying to write the longest novel ever. And they
Mhm.
were trying to beat J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, it's hard having that record as the greatest above your head as
Mhm.
somebody who wants to knock it off. But you're right, though. I mean, you have to have an idea of where you're going, and a lot of these books just seem to go on and on and on and on
Yeah.
and on.
Yeah, no, that's one of my beta readers. They told me the one thing you have to be careful of is that writers, I mean, we love to write, but you want to make sure that you're not writing too much, because one of the things I was most scared about in the scavenger is having it drag, because that's when your reader gets bored. I mean, even if you're writing an action sequence and it's moving a little too quickly, they can always go back and reread things if they don't understand it. But if it's dragging, that's when you risk them putting it down. So I always am wary of making sure that I'm writing just enough to make sure that everything is explained correctly and all the characters are in depth and the way I want them to be. But writing too much is always what I'm scared of.
So, what did you get your, did you go to college? Did you do degree work or advanced studies, stuff like that?
I'm actually a junior in high school,
There you
so
go. I didn't want to ask you how old you were because I thought that was rude.
yes.
I was just looking at your Amazon photo going, my God, she's younger than I thought she was.
Yes, I am 17 years old and I am.
Congratulations on the novel and being, you know, new to the world. I guess you're not new
Yes.
to the world, but
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and I tried. I don't like proclaim my age, or I do say I'm a teen author. But when I went to BookCon or everything, a lot of times I just tried to maintain that professional atmosphere and make sure
yeah.
that people didn't just buy my book because I'm young and because
Well, you don't
I
come off as young. You really don't. When I talked to you, I thought, you were, whatever, normal.
yeah, like just
Not special like you are now.
well, that's good. That's what I'm going
Yeah.
for,
No,
because
that's
I
fantastic.
want people to read my books because the content is good, not just because it was written by someone who's a couple years younger than everyone else.
I mean, I was 17 once, and
hmm
might be a surprise. That was a very, very long time ago, 14 years. No, more than that, 24 years ago. I'm very, very old.
Wow. No,
No, how old
experience
is
is the word.
that? Makes me 41, right? That's how old I am. But
Yeah.
anyway, when I was 17 years old, I was fantasizing exactly where you are right now at the
hmm
cusp of your senior year, right? You just got out of your junior year, or you just about to, or
Yes.
something like
Yep.
that.
Nope. Going right into my senior year.
I was joining the army. That's all I was doing. I didn't even give a shit about football my senior year. I mean, I would lift it and worked out and whatnot, but all I could see was the army.
hmm
Publishing a novel wasn't in my future. You know what I mean? I didn't think that was going to be what I was going to do. It wasn't even a fantasy I was playing around with.
hmm
How do you do that at 17 years old? Say, I'm going to do this, and not only do it, but you do it. Do to
Yeah.
fruition. I mean, you publish it, you do a great job, you put money behind it. I mean, how?
So it took a lot of planning. I mean, I had been planning this dream for so many years, even before I started writing The Scavenger. I really wanted to get something out there before I left for college, because once college comes, like, who knows what's going to happen? There's going to be co-ops and internships, and I mean,
Mhm.
who knows where it's going to go from there? But I knew at least in high school I would be in one place and I would be able to dedicate the time that I wanted to my work. So once I started writing The Scavenger, I have a part-time job and I started saving up money. I
Oh
paid
my God,
for
you make the story even better.
yeah, yeah,
No, you were supposed to say, well, I borrowed the money from my mom and dad. They
no.
supported me all the way financially. I haven't had a job my entire life. I don't, what's money? You're supposed to say, go back, try again. No, that's ridiculous. That's really fantastic and awesome. So you saved up the money yourself
I
and
saved
did all this
up.
work on your
Yeah,
own.
it was really funny because my boss one day, she's like, Julia, you're pulling a lot of hours. Like, what are you working for this? I was like, well, right now I'm saving up to buy the cover for my book. And she looked at me and she was like, really? And I said, yes, yes, I am. So
How much was the cover of your book, if you don't
the
mind if I ask?
cover, no, it was $800 when all was said and done, around 800. That paid for the full back to cover formatting as well as the ebook design as well. So it was definitely on the pricey side when it comes to books. Like, I could have gotten covers for a lot cheaper, but it was that was the best money I spent. It was so worth it.
And a lady in a line at Willowbrook Mall in New Jersey was fondling that cover like it was the best book ever. And I just find that unbelievable. I mean, doesn't
Yeah.
that add to the lore, right? I mean, you
It.
can't make. I have held books in my hand by, people who healed dying soldiers in the military
Mhm.
that didn't look as professional as yours. You know what
And
I mean?
that's honestly what because I was thinking to myself, should I really go for it? Because I mean, there's going to be so many other expenses, and there were many other expenses. But honestly, people say don't judge a book by its cover for a reason, because people absolutely do judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, absolutely,
And
100%.
yeah, I wanted to say, if I saw someone reading my book again out in the wild, would I be interested to read that book too? And
Yeah.
that's really what the driving force was. And I said,
Well,
yeah,
that's a
if
really
I'm
great way to
gonna
look at it.
yeah, if I'm gonna spend the money, then I want to do it right.
So you're going to college in a year.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Do you know yet?
Not yet. So I start my applications this summer, which is crazy. I mean, I've already written my essays, because
Oh,
writing, as
so
you
you're
could
going to good
tell,
schools. When
I
I
hope
went to
so.
college, nobody asked me to write an essay. They were like, "Huh? What's an essay?" And then they mailed me my degree. So I'm like, "Yay!" Like that
There
was
you go.
easy. It took it was $20 an application fee, and I had to show up to like 4 years worth of classes, and then they just that was easy. I didn't learn anything. So you're actually writing you're writing an essay. You're going to good schools,
I am. Yeah.
and you're going to find out in the spring. When is that? Or I can't.
Yeah, so I'm applying early decision to one school, and then I should find out about that mid-December, and then all my other applications are due early December, and I'd find out like February, March, depending on the school.
So you're going to be away from the parents for the first time at 18. You're already a professional writer who's made more money than a lot of people out there, probably.
Yeah.
Just that BookCon alone, I mean, that was pretty outrageous. I mean, how much does it cost to go to BookCon? That's a few $100s too, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it depends on the booth that you get. So we went, we said, if we're gonna spend the money, we're gonna do it right. And my parents did help on that, because I was still a little drained after paying for the book to get published and everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the we're gonna probably, if we're planning on doing it again next year, we're gonna do a slightly less booth, and we know like where the good areas are. We were actually in a pretty decent area, like right on the edge in that
Oh yeah,
corner. Yeah,
perfect.
so they moved a lot of the self-published authors, because they usually keep us in one general area, and the year before we were all the way off to the side, and like a little right hand corner. But this year, they were all in this one general area, so everyone had to walk through our booths to get to the signing area and to get to the main area, which I actually thought was really helpful, to try to get people until to at least look at the work and see if they were interested in it. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, man, you had a really great location. I had a feeling I was going to see you there, honestly. I was kind of looking, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to BookCon. I'm looking at a lady who's very excited about this book. Why
Hmm.
would she be? She has to be going to the same place I'm going. And lo and behold, you're there, and it was really cool. And you had a great location because I think I spotted you immediately. I think it was right
That's
after I got to see Bill Clinton speak, and I was like, "Oh, okay, there you are." No kidding. I was disappointed. It was empty. I was expecting more.
oh, from the talk.
No, Bill Clinton was awesome. I mean, I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. It sounds like he has like permanent cotton mouth or whatever, but I enjoyed
Hmm.
being as close to him as I was.
Hmm.
I like history, and unfortunately, I don't think history is going to be very kind to him or anybody else in the last part of the 20th century. But still, it was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting couple of years. So I'm interested to see what the history books and what the history writers
Oh
take
yeah.
from it. Yeah.
I mean, we don't know, right? They're lying to us now, but you really can't lie forever. I don't think
Yeah.
it's impossible. I mean, we have everything written down someplace. I wonder, honestly, what the JFK records say. I mean, they were supposed to be released last year and they weren't. They were held back.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
I
must be
don't
pretty.
know.
Wasn't that incredible? That was interesting, and it kind of just went away. It's like, hey, we're gonna. No, we're not.
No, we're not. Never mind.
Nope.
Everyone, go
What's
back
who's
to what you're
JFK?
doing.
Nope. I don't know who JFK is. They bought that software that scrubs things from the internet, and all of a sudden,
Mhm.
there's no JFK. What? Who was
Oh,
president before LBJ? Nobody. We didn't have a
nobody?
president at that time. It was 3.5 years of nobody. We governed
Oh.
ourselves. It was an experiment. LBJ came in and saved us from ourselves.
There you go. There you go. Everyone stop. Everyone go back to what you're doing.
And also, I mean, honestly, I guess you don't have to be congratulated for this, but I mean, I've talked to older people than you that couldn't carry a conversation like you're carrying either. So, I mean, what are you getting your degree in? Do you know yet? I mean, what ideas are you bouncing around?
Yeah, so a lot of people take this as a surprise, but I'm actually planning on going into the field of mechanical engineering,
Why?
which
That makes complete sense. You know how many people I talk to who are authors and are engineers at the same time? They seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've always loved engineering. I actually just did a pre-college program at Stevens Institute of Technology, which
Oh,
was that
cool.
was so cool. But it really helps balance it. 'Cause I have a love of the arts. I love music, I do theater, and I of course love writing. And it just helps balance it all because when I'm in an engineering classroom, my mind is inundated with numbers and facts and trying to everything is precision and getting everything just the way it needs to be. And
Yeah.
writing is just that like creative outlet that really
But it's
helps
the
balance
same
everything.
thing though, isn't it? It's the same thing. You have to have the flow and the organization. I mean, there might not be an overt math at work. There's a subtle math at work. Like I'm not
Mhm.
doing the math, but somebody with your kind of brain probably can. When I'm sitting in front of math, it just gets muddled, it just blurs out completely. I love it.
Mhm.
I love the
Mhm.
concepts. I love the magic that works behind the numbers, the mechanics of everything. God, it's beautiful. It really,
Mhm.
honestly is so wonderful, but I can't do it. I can't make that stuff function in the way that it's supposed to. I'll skip things and miss them and blah, and I'll just get frustrated and it just won't work out.
Mhm.
But I think obviously it's a great use of logic, and so is writing, because things can't be illogical in writing unless your name is Vonnegut.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I'm joking. He was very logical.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so interesting. And like when people, because I've met other very rare, like, I mean, I've seen a couple and I met a few online, but there are other engineer writers out there like you
Yeah,
said, and it's
bunch.
so interesting because our brains, like, they just, I can see them working on the same wavelength
Yeah.
where we find these connections within art and science, and that's one of the things I'm trying
Yeah,
to
isn't
do.
that what it is? I just
Yeah.
heard this great quote the other day about that whole half glass full, the half is glass. Let's start over again. The the glass is half full metaphor. Some people
Mhm.
think the
Yeah.
glass is half full, some people think the glass is half empty.
Mhm.
Engineers wonder why the hell they wasted so much glass. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Why did you use a smaller glass? That makes no sense. What
I mean,
what a waste of space.
yes, yes, and honestly, and it just, I feel like it's that way when even like when I'm writing, I'm trying to find the amount of words that I need to tell the scene in its entirety, but there's like the balance there without going too much or too into it. And it's the same thing. I have to do technical drawing in my classes, and you want to annotate the work just enough so they get the idea across. But if you put too many annotations, it's hard to read. So like there are those parallels there that are very, very interesting.
Yeah, you're very true, because you really can't smack somebody over the head with your story. You have to be
Mhm.
subtle. You have to
Mhm.
tickle them. You have to let them into it gently, because I mean, it takes readers are very fickle.
Yeah.
I mean, as a reader, and I'm positive that you read too,
Oh, of
just the
course.
slightest disturbance in the story will piss me off. Like, nope,
Uh,
I can't get into this shit. I don't know why, right? It's like a magic.
yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I'd like to know how to make it work all the time, because there's so many books on my phone right now that I've started and I cannot read because I'm pissed off at them.
Yeah, no, it's very subtle in the art of writing. And I've been getting into again, like I've been moving back to fantasy, but one of the more interesting genres I think is horror because
Oh
it is
yeah.
very hard to write an authentically scary book. And
Yeah. I
some
was thinking about that recently too. Because you think, oh, I'll just write a ghost story. But no, you're not, because nobody cares about a ghost story. You got to be incredibly unique for it to
yeah.
be interesting.
And it's not like it's like an indie horror film where you could throw in some jump scares and like some scary like effects and stuff and
Or a
everything's
unicorn
okay.
and
Or you
Thor.
yeah, and then it's just everything's fine. But like with a horror book, you have to really have that build up, that and those subtle things,
Yeah.
the references that come back. And I would love because I'm a horror buff. I absolutely love everything horror, and I would
Oh
love
yeah.
to write a horror book one day, but right now I'm just not there as a writer yet. And I can tell that if I tried to do something, it would not pan out the way that I wanted it to. So in the future maybe, but I mean I still love a good horror book when I can find it.
Obviously, I'm a writer also, and I have more ego than probably any other writer combined. I had a really great opportunity to talk to this author from Seattle,
Mhm.
and she's professional like you would not believe. She writes for game, now she writes game fiction, this, that. She's contracted all over the place. And she put a little snippet of one of her pieces up. I'm like, aha, I'm going to be a better writer than this person. So I started reading this thing. It was like 200 pages. I was sucked in immediately. I wanted to know why this trucker died in his truck.
Wow.
I'm completely competitive with her in my mind, but
Uh-huh.
her story was good enough to make me go, oh, that's
Oh.
really good. I hate you so much.
Yeah, no, it was really funny because when I was in the midst of writing The Scavenger and I was in like the editing phase and like I was headlong into it, I actually had a really hard time reading other people's work because my editor
Huh.
brain was just turned on and I'd be like,
It's
I'm not
very
sure if I would use
interesting.
that word there or that sentence is a little too long. And
That's what
I had to
happens to me.
like, yeah, just pull away
What
for
I'm
a
going
little
through right
while.
now, because I'm endlessly writing, right? I always have a
Uh-huh.
project going. So I'm
Hmm.
constantly going, is this better than me? Is this better than my stuff? Is this
Yeah.
good? What makes this good? Why is this so good? Oh shit, I've read 14 pages without actually reading anything. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, but it is, I feel like, important to read in your genre to see what people are looking for and what people like. But if you read too much in your genre, then you just play the comparison game and
Yeah, it's
it gets
hard, right?
difficult. And there's
I'm
so
running
many writers out there, so
mhm.
it's difficult.
I'm running into the problem of wondering it's already been done. You know what I mean? There's
Hmm.
so much science fiction already been written, and I just don't know if I'm writing something that's already been written. Am I writing something unique or am I writing something borrowed? Am I
Hmm.
taking from something and I'm not even aware I'm taking from and using it for myself or not? I mean, it's just really hard. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, I mean, you could go indie and you can publish your own stuff and you'll never know, you know what I mean? Because people may or
Hmm.
may not buy your things. Or you could try to go the traditional route and try to get people to buy your stuff and publish it in their magazine or use their name on the cover. And if they say no, then you kind of know, right? You're
Yeah.
like, oh, there's something missing here. I need to keep working harder.
Yeah. And I do have in the future, I would love, once I've established, and I've already begun to establish my name as a writer and as a young adult author, but in the future I would love to try to go the traditional publishing route once I have like once my life has calmed down a little bit, because I mean right now it's very crazy with
Yeah.
college and everything. So once
Well,
everything's
don't
settled
hope
down.
that it calms down though, because exciting things happen when waves wash up onto the shore, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's where you find all your seashells and your starfishes and whatever. And I mean,
Yeah.
just I
That's
hope
very
that you.
true.
What do they say? I mean, I hope you live an interesting life, or hope you live in interesting times, or something like that as a curse.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it can be quite scary. But I mean, honestly, you're putting yourself out there, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And the other part about it is you're JL Willow. You know what I mean? You're a totally
Yeah.
different person than yourself. So later on down the road, if you're saying, you know what, I want to separate myself from that attempt and do something completely different, you don't have to be that person anymore. You could be yourself or somebody else or something else.
Yeah, and that's the really cool thing is I feel like we as writers, we put ourselves into the mind of other characters to try to create something new, but then we also can draw that line between ourselves and who we want to be as well. And
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that's such a cool thing that we have the
Mhm.
ability to do now. And it's easier now than ever with the self-publishing industry. If you don't want to go traditional, you have that opportunity.
Or both, right? I mean, that's where I'm kind of playing around with now. Like you could do something published traditionally and then collect something and publish it yourself. You know what I mean? You don't
Hmm.
want to,
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't want to, I don't there's a balance. There really is. That's what I'm experiencing now, having all these conversations, is that there's an amazing balance between doing it all yourself and building an audience. And
Yeah.
the audience that you build is really important because they have to interact with you. Like the people that I really love on Twitter are like John Scalzi. Do you know who that is?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, his Twitter account is the best. And he's
Yes.
snarky and he's an asshole. And like, that he'll block you in a second. I got blocked by William Shatner. It was the most devastating moment of my life.
Oh.
I almost didn't continue after that. You know what I did? It was one of those SpaceX launches.
Uh-huh.
It took off. He made a comment about it and I responded and said, he said something about rockets lifting. I was like, is that a metaphor or is he talking about real rockets? And he wrote back, what is wrong with your brain? And I was blocked.
Aw. Oh, that's too bad.
I know. I love William Shatner too. He's my captain. Devastating. Devastating.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, I mean, we are working on an hour at this point, I think. I think we started on time, right?
Yeah, no, no, no. We started right about one.
It's about 1:56 right now. So, you're working on your next novel. This novel's out independently, so you don't owe anything to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, what is you've got college, you got your senior year. I mean, you can't do bad, right? You have to still do good.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. You
I
can't do what
went.
I did and like take that DCT stuff and like have half a day and then fill the first part of your day up with like PE and art.
Mm-hmm.
like a
Yeah,
history class.
I'm taking some interesting classes this year. I'm taking obviously a lot of physics. I am taking an AP Lit course because, of course, got to keep the writing in there. I do
Yeah.
have room for a creative writing course, which is nice. But I mean, there's also the engineering and robotics. It's
My
gonna
God,
this
where do you go to school at? This
no,
is ridiculous, man. I didn't even have a theater I had a theater program my freshman year in my high school, and they said, "No, we're not going to do theater. You guys suck." And I had an art
yeah.
class, and the teacher in there, they would be that was the only art class in the entire school, and she would walk up to people and go, "No, no, that could be okay if you work on it. No." You
Yeah,
got a
no,
robotics class that is not cool, dude. That's like
no,
cheating, man.
yeah, we live our school is honestly it's honestly the size of a college though. There are 800 kids in my graduating class. It's a humongous school. It's funny, so I'm looking at colleges. I'm like, okay, this is slightly bigger than my school. Okay, this is slightly smaller, but
Is it a
we
magnet school? I mean, is it like a special school, or is it just a normal New Jersey school?
no, it's just a public high school, but it
Wow.
is yeah, it's crazy the amount of people that they have there. And I mean, some of the engineering courses, like I mean, they're all taught by the same guy, so there can only be so many layer like how deep he can go into it can only be so much. But I mean, we're very blessed in the area that we're in. So it's given me a ton of opportunities, and I honestly I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's gonna be a good year.
Oh, that's awesome. And you're continuing to write steadily, right? I mean, obviously
Mm-hmm.
the summer's going to be here. You'll probably finish your novel, the next novel, before the summer's out.
Yeah, I'm about 35,000 words into it right
Ooh, good
now.
for you.
On the first draft. So I'm planning this one's probably going to finish around 40 on the first draft, but it's going to be up to 50,000 pretty soon with editing and stuff cuz I already
Uh,
know that there's areas I want to expand upon, but I don't want to rush it, but
yeah,
I'm hoping that once I know where I'm going to college, that'll be just a huge load off and I'll have that all set in stone so then I can really focus on getting this out. I would like it out before I go to college because then I can really focus on like solidifying my place there and making sure that I do everything that I want to do.
would you do the same thing? Would you follow the same steps? Would you invest the same type of resources in your second novel, or
I
will you have collected those resources from your first novel and it's not even a question?
No, I mean, honestly, I would not do a single thing differently. I am so happy with where I am right now, and everything is just fallen into place. I took a lot of risks, and I took a lot of risks financially and with time wise. But it honestly, everything just worked out so well, and everyone I've talked to has been so grateful. I've just been so grateful for them, and they've been so welcoming and open and helping whenever I needed help, and it's been a great experience.
That's really fantastic to hear. Um, Basically, to sum up the podcast, I like to ask two questions.
Mhm.
The first one is, what are you engaging with media-wise, video games, movies, television, or books that you would recommend people check out?
So, just recently, I do dabble a little bit in sci-fi, and I am a huge Andy Weir fan. I mean,
Oh my
everyone
God, me too. I love him so much.
I love him so much, and I pre-ordered his book Artemis, and
Oh my God, I already read it. It's really awesome.
it actually launched a day before the Scavenger, which was so cool because I was like, oh my gosh, we're kind of in sync there. But if you're looking, just it's a great summer read. I feel like it keeps you on the edge of your seat.
So good. It's
I
really
love his
good.
writing style, so definitely check out
People don't like it
Artemis.
though. People don't like
I
Artemis
know,
for some reason. I
and
don't understand why though. It really sucked me in, and it was a good read. I read it in like a day and a half or something. Maybe
yeah,
that's why. Maybe it just wasn't deep enough, or something along those lines. It was really good though. I liked it a lot. His
I
world building is amazing, and
yeah,
that's in the same world as The Martian too.
mm-hmm.
That's the same
Yeah,
universe.
yeah, it's just the thing is I feel like people were looking. I don't know if they thought that Artemis would be more like The Martian in that it's focusing on like in that same style with the different the posts and everything that he did. But it just I like that he kept the same vibe and the same atmosphere, but moved it into a different book, and I think he did it seamlessly. So I really enjoyed it. So I mean, I guess some books aren't for everyone, but I loved Artemis.
I mean, honestly, at this point, we have to just assume that people are stupid because look what they're doing to Star Wars, or our Star Wars. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they hate it, and I love it. I think it's really good. Every one of the
Yeah.
movies that have come out recently, I'm like, dude, this is badass. Give me some more Star Wars, and people are like, no, we're exhausted.
I'm like,
We
no,
want to
okay.
take a break. We want other stuff. We want Marvel.
Yes, okay, and I'm so glad we can agree on this because I actually really enjoyed Solo. I saw
Yeah,
it on
me too.
opening night.
It
Okay.
sucked though, didn't it? I mean, it wasn't great, but I mean, it's like, dude, it's Solo, and that dude that we complained about for like months and months and months was actually a great choice for that that character.
Yes,
He
and
was brilliant.
I liked how he didn't completely focus on like Harrison Ford's acting, but he did base it off of it. He didn't just copy it. He actually expanded upon the character. And I mean, there
Didn't
were
even notice. You know what I was pissed off
yeah.
about? They got rid of God, what's her name from Westworld? That real beautiful 50-year-old woman,
Oh,
Bandy Newton, right?
yes.
Bandy Newton. They killed her off in the first part. I'm like, how are you gonna do that? How are you
Yeah.
going to have her in your movie and then murder her? Honestly, I'm so mad at Kathleen Kennedy. It's unbelievable. I mean, I
Yeah.
want to like her. I really do. I have respect for what she's done in her career.
Mhm.
But she screwed up Rogue One, right? We were supposed to have a much, much darker movie than we had. She second guessed herself. She second guessed the director and the production.
Mhm.
We ended up with a good movie. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining about the movie, but I always wonder, it was a different movie at one point. It was totally different. Different
Yeah.
scenes, different ending, different everything. And I'm like, dude, I want to see that movie.
And
Don't tease me.
I feel like that's what happened with Solo too because I know
Exactly what happened with Solo, and that's
yeah.
why I'm mad because I'm like, you had images of greatness. There was comedic elements in the very beginning of the chain robbery, and that's the only thing of that movie that stayed from the original vision
Mhm.
was that train robbery scene.
Yeah, and I really do feel like they should have like they need to stop second guessing themselves and going
Yes.
back to the original trilogy because there's so much more universe to expand upon.
Yeah.
And if they choose the directors, stick with it and let them see their vision from start to finish, I feel like the stories would be so much more in depth and so much more complete than what they are. Because
Solo
it definitely feels like there's something missing from each of them.
from the movies, something is not there, like
Mhm.
a heart and soul thing. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I mean, the first movie, 4, was brilliant. Star Wars was brilliant.
Mhm.
And every single movie from that point on has lacked a certain amount of soul, I think.
Mhm.
They tried to recapture it. I don't think they actually came close, and they never will. But the fortunate thing is that story is so vast, and it captures your imagination so well. And the reason that my generation loved those movies is that we filled in all the gaps. All the shitty parts were like, no, we made an excuse for it, and that's what we need to do now. You know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
going to be shitty parts. We have to make excuses for the shitty parts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
Oh,
mean, it's
that's because blah blah blah.
mhm. It's not going to be perfect, and I mean,
Yeah,
it's never gonna be perfect. I mean, there are problems with the original trilogy too, but like
yeah, 100%.
you, yeah, you have to move past it,
Have
and
to move past it.
you have to remember that Star Wars is fun. Like all
Fun.
these people
Yeah.
are arguing about it, and I'm like, guys, come
Dude, just
on, like
stop. You're ruining it. They're ruining it.
yes,
There's not gonna be any more Star
yes,
Wars. I mean, they're breaking it. There's like, dude, you remember when you were excited the Force Awakens was coming out? It's like just
yes,
every movie's like that for me, and there's not gonna be an opportunity to get like that twice a year or something. I mean, that was awesome. Saw
yeah,
the Last Jedi, and then I had Solo to look forward to. I was like, oh, I was mad at
yeah,
Solo though before I saw it. I really didn't want to like it. I thought it was
yeah,
gonna suck, but it was good.
yeah. No,
Except for they did.
I had very low expectations going into it,
Yeah,
and like
me
the
too.
fact that I liked it a little bit, I was like, oh my gosh, would you look at that? Like it wasn't horrible.
I mean, they need to get rid of those monsters, man. For some
Hmm.
reason, somebody told me that Star Wars has to have a monster in every single movie. There has to be a big monster for them to wrestle with or whatever.
Oh,
And in
yeah,
the Force Awakens, they had that stupid thing on Han Solo's ship, that
that's
chase scene or
right.
whatever. I was like, that's done. That's where the movie kills me. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh no, come on, can you delete this part? Jar Jar does that to me in the Phantom Menace. I'm all about that movie until Jar Jar shows up,
Yeah,
and then he
yeah, and
ruins
then
it for me.
there was the weird milk thing on.
I know. Just
It was
disgusting.
so bad. I was like, are you serious? That was just it was so
And
unnecessary.
it
It's
wasn't blue milk, it was green milk. But when I
oh
saw it, it was blue milk because obviously Star Wars has blue milk. The colors were
yes.
too similar. Man, if you're gonna have something like that, it's gonna be unique 100%, not subtly. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? What's blue
Yeah.
milk? Is it that? Because in my mind, when I was watching the movie, that's what blue milk was until I found out that wasn't blue milk, that was green milk.
Oh
So
my
dumb.
gosh. It is. That was the last did I mean it again it had its problems, but I mean that one fight scene between Ray and with Ray and Kylo, I thought that was super cool. But that was honestly the driving point. I was like, are you serious? Like just come on, come on.
Dude, I gotta say though, the sexiest thing I've ever seen with that was that finger touch.
Yes.
It's just,
Yes.
and I don't know why. It's just two finger touching. I don't know. They did the imaging. They had you could see the ridges in the fingernail or the fingerprints or whatever. Like,
Yes.
dude, that's awesome that you could
It was
portray that much emotion in such a tiny little scene with
yes.
the technology that we have right now. Any other year, not possible. You know what I mean? The Hobbit did
Mhm.
that for us. That what did they call it? Like
Oh yeah. I forget what but no, I yeah.
17D. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, I we always feel like okay, like this is as far like movies in general, like this is as far. We've come so far. I don't see how it could get better. But then like you see stuff like that and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like this is just it's such a cool era to be living in.
Yeah.
Like there's just so much happening."
But that's the reason the writers do that before anybody else. I mean, yeah, great, the technology is good, but they used it with
Mhm.
writing. I mean, somebody's telling a story with that one little tiny moment, and you could pull that little moment, right? I mean, I can go to that
Mhm.
movie right now, find it, screen capture it, and post it, and everybody's like, "Hell yeah, I know what that means." You know
Mhm.
what I mean? That's an intimate
Absolutely.
connection. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. That's wonderful. That guy's who, Ryan Johnson?
Yeah, who did
Yeah,
Last Jedi?
and he did a bunch of what the Book of Isaac or something, right?
Yeah,
Something like
yeah.
that.
And I think they're actually giving him his own trilogy now. Like they're
Supposedly. I mean, what's
yeah.
happening with Star Wars? We don't even know, do we?
Yeah, I have no idea because they keep talking about this stuff, and I know they switched directors for like the last movie. I don't actually know who's directing it right now.
JJ
Is it
Abrams
JJ?
again,
Okay.
yeah. And that's as far as I know. They might change that.
Yeah.
I don't like JJ Abrams. He ruined Star Trek.
Yeah, no, he has a certain style to him, and I feel like he doesn't really I feel like well, I mean his big problem with Force Awakens was that he just stuck too much to the original trilogy, but I feel like he has some weird choices that he makes sometimes that just don't really mesh with what's been done previously.
Yeah, I don't like him. I love Lost. I thought Lost was really well
Mhm.
done. I didn't mind the ending at all. I mean, obviously it had to end somehow. If they had to be in
Mhm.
purgatory, great. I mean, I don't know. I followed the shit out of that show. They had so many little tiny what do they call it? When you hide something in shows.
Oh, like
Oh,
foreshadowing?
no, no, like breadcrumbs, but not breadcrumbs.
Oh, yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
That's a word I cannot pull words out of my brain.
It's all good. We'll edit it in post. Edit in post.
I'll add it in, just be this random and the word, and then we'll go on with our conversation.
Yeah, no, but the little things that they kept throughout the
The
series.
names of the characters are philosophers. I mean, I would watch this blog that would go through every single variant that they had in the episode and
Hmm.
digest it. And at the end of the day, it turned out to be as shallow as a kiddie pool. But while we were watching it, it was deep and it was going to be meaningful and it was going to change the universe.
Yeah, and
And
that's
that's
on.
why I hate J.J. Abrams because his stupid mystery box did not have what I wanted it in to have in it. I wanted answers. They had no answers.
Yeah, no, but that's honestly, I feel like I would love to write something like that one day where
Yeah.
there's enough in it that like where you create a whole new universe and there's all these like little subtle things that
Mm.
people can pick apart on vlogs. And I mean, I would totally if I
Yeah, man.
created
Can you
something
imagine
that
that?
big.
Like a J.K. Rowling did that, right?
Oh,
People just pick the shit out. I mean, going back to Star Wars, George Lucas did that.
yeah.
J.J. Abrams did that. I mean, you do something that people go, I want more. I'm going to break it apart into its tiniest little form, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna find out how it works, right? I mean, somebody like you loves that shit.
Yeah.
An
I
engineer, I mean, that's what that stuff is made for. How does this work? I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna reverse engineer
yeah.
it. I'm gonna break it down.
Honestly, and I would love to I would absolutely love to do that one day. And I mean I just read the series The Illuminate Files. They just came out with the third book. I actually got to meet the authors Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and they really did an amazing job. It's another sci-fi trilogy where it was just there were so many like subtle aspects in it, and it was just honestly it was such a gorgeous read. It was absolutely wonderful.
That's fantastic. Yeah, man, those little tiny parts and pieces. Going back into it, I was gonna say that I got my degree in English, creative
Hmm.
writing, and that's the engineering of stories.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You could still be an engineer. Nobody will call you an engineer. In fact, when you tell them that you got your degree in English, they will feel bad for you a little bit. But you're still an engineer, right?
Yeah, and
No, you're
honestly,
not.
that's
Don't humor me. Don't humor me.
well, I mean, technically, when you're talking about engineering, an engineer is someone who takes knowledge and takes something that's already been created and like makes something new out of it and improves it. So I feel like there's that saying that there's no original thought anymore, that everything that's ever been created has already been done. But I feel like there's still those aspects that we take and we tweak it in our own way to create that new story and to create that new persona that we want to include in our work.
That's 100% true. I mean, that's beautiful poetry too, because the way things work is the way they're always going to work, right?
Hmm.
I mean, physics, loving physics, the way gravity kind of propels the entire universe, and however that works in your brain. When I say the word physics, you think Isaac Newton and Einstein, and I
Yes.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what smart people think when I say physics, but I think of the rules. You know what I mean? You're
Hmm.
not gonna work around the rules. Gravity isn't really going to work. You're not going to make gravity stop being gravity,
Hmm.
but you can make gravity work for you, right? You could twist gravity. You can make
Hmm.
momentum work for you. I mean, you can make things fly with gravity. I mean, gravity is your ultimate tool, and words are a writer's ultimate tool in a way. And they're the
Yeah.
math, what you put down on paper. That's how you form everything. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I talked to Daniel Abrams recently. He wrote The Expanse, and he said that writing is basically guided meditation. You know,
Hmm.
where you're putting the words down on paper and your reader comes along and does the work for you, basically.
Yeah.
They are guided to hear that story in their brain. And it's brilliant. I mean,
It really.
you're just laying the schematic down or schematic down.
Yeah, it's honestly it's such a beautiful craft, and I feel like the more that we write, the more that we like kind of find our own voice. But every word that we put down, I think it's so cool that we can arrange words in ways that have never been done before. And I mean,
Yeah.
there's only so many characters, but there's so many formations of those characters that can just
So true.
it's
I
just
mean,
so
26,
beautiful.
right? I mean, there's 26. There's
Yeah.
26 letters that you could use to form sounds. And those sounds form words, and those words form ideas, right? I mean, they're just
Hmm.
infinite. It could go on
Yeah.
forever. I mean, it is really beautiful if you really want to sit back and think about those. What do they say? What is that saying about the monkeys in Shakespeare? A billion monkeys with a billion typewriters will eventually type out the words of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
That's basically how I feel I am. If I punch out enough words, maybe I'll write something that'll be good enough to publish.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like we're a little more smarter than monkeys. Just slightly
Maybe
smarter.
I actually think that we're just evil monkeys, all of us. I mean, we're horrible people, things, creatures, monsters on this planet. I mean, we've killed so many. We've destroyed everything. Actually, we're not even in the high. What was the epic that we were just in? The what's it called? The Hydrogen? Hylocin?
Oh,
Holocene? Hylocene. What is it
y-
called? What epic
uh
were we in?
it's something along those lines. I don't remember.
We changed though. We're now out of it.
Yeah.
We're in the human um epic. They don't
Yeah.
call it that. That's what I'm calling it because I'm trying to look it up as I'm talking.
Yeah, no, but that's where we are now, and it's crazy. It's just there's so many things going on at once, and to it's honestly it's crazy when you think about it. And just I mean, a lot of people say that they worry that they're going to have no impact in the world, but I feel like with writing you have the ability to, even if it's just for a couple days, to take someone and put them and in somewhere other than where they are. And it's just that's part of the reasons
Very
I
interesting.
love it. Yeah,
I mean,
it's really beautiful.
you're young, 17 years old. Your parents obviously care about you greatly. I'm a father of two 3-year-olds. They're twins, and I look at them and I hope that I can guide them in a direction that makes them happy later on in life.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that your parents can look back at what you're doing right now and think, okay, she's about to go into the world. She's doing a good job. I think we did a great job with this. It's
Yeah.
just a really wonderful way to think about it. I mean, that's the impact they made. Are they going to
Hmm.
touch a million people? Are they going to touch a billion people? Probably not. They touched you. You know what?
Yeah.
And you're going to go out into the world and you're going to touch somebody too. You're going to do something. I mean, you're going to expand what they gave you and give it to other people.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean, are
absolutely
we
right.
all Stephen King? No. I mean, I just hope my son doesn't go and murder a classroom full of kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just hope they don't do horrible things, and they laugh and they smile and have a good time. And I hope they don't look back on me and go, "That asshole! Oh,
Yeah.
why did he have to be my dad?"
Well, I mean, well, when we're teenagers, sometimes I feel like we have some of those moments, but in the long run, I feel like we're able to see the overall good impact that everything has done. Because I mean, our parents are honestly, and I can absolutely say this with absolute surety, is that they are the ones who impacted me and influenced me the most. And in the very beginning of the Scavenger, I did dedicate it to them. I said to Mama and Padre, thank you for believing in Squigmire, because Squigmire was my very, very first book. And I remember giving it to them, and I was looking back at it the other day, and they totally could have said, like, Julia, what is this? This is not good at all. But they didn't, and they believed in me, and they're honestly the reason where I am today, and I'm in the direction where I'm heading. It's obvious. It's all due to them.
Where can we find you on the World Wide Web? Where do you want people to be directed?
So you can absolutely check out my website and blog. It's www.jlwillow.com. I'm also on Goodreads, as well as Instagram and Twitter at jlwillowbooks. So you can definitely find me there, reach out, and check out my work.